It's true. It worked. It's a great point. Good evening, everybody. Today's date is November 27th, 2020, and throughout the Northeastern nation, I am your host, Tom Kaczynski. Welcome to, we'll call it Free Atlantic Radio, or whatever we'll call it, Tom Unscripted tonight. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I was telling Dana I had a bad joke to start the show today. When it comes to being sharp, I am the butter knife in the drawer. But nonetheless, we're going to have a good show tonight, hopefully, and I'll be entertaining as best I can be for y'all. And we'll get into the questions, monologues, a lot happening out there, and honestly more questions than answers. But I want to share some things I've been researching, and I definitely want to get your questions for it. So we'll do 10-20 minutes of monologue where I kind of do a data dump on you. You guys like that, and I provide information. You actually, I don't know if you can't get anywhere else, but what I can usually do is I can synthesize it, and I'm usually better at collecting information faster than the curve, and then doing analysis on it that's cogent because I'm willing to consider things most people won't. And one of the things you find when you do analysis is that a lot of people will just not ask certain questions because they're just not willing to think outside of certain boxes that they've said, well, this is unthinkable. There's nothing really that's unthinkable. There are things that are heinous and reprehensible, but if you want to understand the way evil people act in the world, then you better understand those things because they're willing to do them. And usually battles kind of come down to who's willing to do what to whom, and it's really a sad thing. But unless you have absolute good on your side, which is why I recommend everyone get close to Jesus Christ if you haven't already, you're probably going to have a hard time fighting people who are really evil because they'll do more than you will, and that's why you need God. Nonetheless, we'll get to the prayer at the end of the show, just give you a little preview of what I'm thinking. But what I wanted to cover today's episode was I really wanted to go into a little bit the question of where I think we go from here. And I'll show you, actually, before I came on, I was reading, this is Anthony J. Tata, and this is also the guy who is in charge of defense policy planning at the Pentagon now. For those of you who haven't been paying attention, not only have former General Tata, Mr. Christopher Miller, Ezra Cohen-Watnick, and now Michael Flynn, who knows what he's doing. He's been pardoned. We have all these interesting people coming in to the episode. We've seen people like Kissinger lose their clearance in the National, what's it called, Defense Policy Board. So a lot of things are happening in very quick order in the sort of way you would need if the military was getting ready to fight a major insurgency. And you have to wonder what this is about because there's two options that occur to me. Option number one is that they're going to go full on, cross the Rubicon Dawn and decide they're going to fight this one way or another, which Trump, you could say, is bringing in the loyalists, and that you would see that potentially that's how the media will probably frame this, and 4chan in its less thoughtful moments will probably agree with it. Or you could see this slightly differently, which is to say that you're having a whole bunch of people put in place in the expectation of something funny happening who are prepared to fight a counterinsurgency campaign that might come to the United States. So here's what I think is happening, but I may be wrong. And keep in mind, the first rule of warfare is that you're going to try to delude or deceive your enemy. And we certainly are seeing this where with both enemies, foreign and domestic, as the general would have said at the title of his first book. So some of you have been following very closely what's been happening with the various election suggestions. The president today tweeted that there were 47 sticks that he thought had 50,000 votes on USB drives that were loaded into the Pennsylvania system. Some of you know that in Arizona, the suggestion was made that 35,000 votes were preloaded for every Democratic candidate. I do know with respect to the case in Pennsylvania that there was a break into the building where these were housed in Philadelphia not 4 days before the election. We've seen that there are now precincts in Michigan where there are 800% of the amount of turnout that was out there. And we saw in the state of Pennsylvania two odd anomalies that were reported in the press conference on Wednesday. Number one, that they managed to have 2.5 mail-in vote ballots, 2.5 million mail-in ballots returned when only 1.8 million were issued. Now, I know math isn't that good in the Common Core age, but someone should be able to figure out how 700,000 votes don't add up. And the more interesting thing is the votes that came in really late that came in, we had 600,000 for Joe Biden and about 3,200 for Trump. So someone obviously made a mistake. 3,200 is way too many. Don't they know? No one votes for Orange Man bad. But the problem is when you have things this obvious, it becomes real clear statistically that a big scam is happening, and there were a lot of people involved in it. Now, the story as I understand it, and this is where it goes back and gets a little complicated. I'm going to make a lot of speculation because, hey, this is the internet and I don't have to be reliable. You just listen and decide if I'm a crazy coot up in the cabin or if I'm telling you something useful. But we're going to go back to 2016. And some of you might remember in 2016 that when President Trump or Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton, it was going late into the night, it was about 11 p.m. And Pennsylvania, Trump had a clear lead that was breaking bigger and bigger. Wisconsin was not even thought to be a state in question, nor Michigan, but they wouldn't call the race until 2 or 3 in the morning. And why didn't they do that? What were they waiting for that they wouldn't call the race? Of course, the media doesn't like Republicans, and we understand that. And, look, nobody likes Republicans, not even Republicans. That's why we all call ourselves conservatives whenever we are Republicans. But nonetheless, as the way that election worked out, what we ended up seeing was that there was this strange pause where as if something was supposed to happen. And they were saying there must have been hacking. Something must have hacked the election. And I think they're right. I think the election was hacked. But I think it was white hats who hacked the efforts to steal the election in 2016, and they did not do so in 2020, which is why we see Joe Biden get 80 million votes. When the guy couldn't get 10 people to show up, he scored more black votes in major cities like Atlanta, Philadelphia, Detroit, and Milwaukee than Barack Obama did. Now, I'm not going to say that people can't change their voting habits, but I have studied, researched a little bit how minority voters tend to vote. And generally speaking, Joe Biden ain't it. Super predator guy, not the one they tend to vote for. Nonetheless, we are now in fiction land. So what happens in fiction land is we come forward to this. And one of the interesting things that happened with the whole Russia collusion delusion was that there were some very intense executive orders passed during the 2018 midterm to protect election security. And from what I am given to understand through reading a lot of various things through the swamp, the NSA, amongst other agencies, were in looking at this. And so 2020 was allowed to happen the way it was set up to happen. And it looks like maybe there were some things out there that were being checked. You see hints that the watermark thing might not have been a total fraud. And as we see filings come through here, that we are seeing now the state of Pennsylvania the Senate is acting there to potentially decertify the election and put their own electors in. There's going to be similar efforts launched in Arizona and Michigan, I understand. And we also see in the state of Georgia a lot of accusations about a last-minute voting system being put in by Governor Kemp. Now, I don't know the full extent of this fraud, but what I do know is that whatever this is coming to an end game, and apparently someone has the goods because they were stealing servers in Germany, and it looks like if you held a gun to my head and asked me to guess at what was happening, the CIA was fighting the DIA. So Central Intelligence Agency I think it comes out of 1947 National Security Act, basically the enforcement arm of the bankers, if you really understand how the game works. Defense Intelligence Agency is the military equivalent of that. They don't play nice with each other. Why? Because the CIA hires outside mercenaries and does all sorts of interesting things like arming the Mujahideen, who then gets the military killed. And that's why you've seen a lot of fighting. So if you want to think of who's fighting in this little war that no one's talking about, put John Brennan on one side of the equation and put General Michael T. Flynn on the other side, and you might have a feel for what's happening out there. So where do we go from here is the real question. And what it seems to be, based upon the fact that I know on Monday they're planning on having a hearing in Arizona, they're working to reveal certain fraud in Nevada. It looks like there's a lot of different ways the Trump people are in on this in order to push this forward. And even though the Third Circuit Court basically invalidated the lawsuit, Samuel Alito, who is responsible for that area and who the state of Pennsylvania ignored their own laws in allowing that election, is going to fast track something to the Supreme Court. So here's where we're sitting. The Supreme Court in the next 2 weeks, probably before the Electoral College meets, I want to say it's December 8th, December 9th, will have to make some determinations. And it looks, as best I can tell, that they have 5 justices. Use the example of the recently passed decision where they allowed larger gatherings to meet in the state of New York, for instance, which was something that was constitutional. And as usual, John Roberts went against it. The rumor going around everywhere is that someone has some big blackmail on Roberts, and apparently it might have something to do with Epstein. I don't know that for sure, but it is funny how you can always count on him to vote the wrong way and be supportive of the globalists. It must be tough to have that blackmail on you. Nonetheless, that doesn't really work well for Supreme Court. We don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do, but we do know that we have 3 lawyers in Kavanaugh, Gorsuch and Barrett, who were involved with the decision, and Bush v. Gore, who are looking at this. That Alito has seemed friendly, and Clarence Thomas would love to get even with Joe Biden for what happened during the hearings when he got appointed many, many years ago. Revenge being a dish best served cold, and I know we want our justices to be apolitical. I want that too, but they're not. They're not going to be. And the truth is, justice is on the side of saying that if we can't verify that anywhere from a third to half the votes are reliable, then we have to do something different. Maybe we have to do the election over. But by constitutional mandate, what it seems would happen is the states will appoint electors directly if the Supreme Court doesn't invalidate certain amounts of voting. And at that point, it looks likely that Donald Trump will still stay president. Why is that interesting? Because if he does, we will have the meltdown of all meltdowns. And we go back to what I started with. Why is Donald Trump bringing in all these counterinsurgency actors? Easy. He's expecting massive riots. Why are troops coming back from the United States from overseas? Because when that happens, he's expecting that we may need those domestically because of whatever terrorist actions that are here, whatever links exist between different paramilitary networks, maybe Antifa, BLM, potentially the Chinese, the Cubans, the Iranians, who knows? I don't know all the details, but I will tell you the world is an uglier place than people are aware, and most Americans are going by blissfully unaware, thinking that this is just something that's been solved. We're not even close to being solved. These are the opening stages of a deep state civil war against the military. And we're going to see how this all shakes out. I don't know what's going to be the outcome of it, but I do know certain key points, which is if Trump and his team, which I assume are in concert with the military to some extent, do not have this somewhat resolved by the time the electors meet, it may not matter. And that's why I think we're going to be on a very fast schedule. Keep an eye on what Sidney Powell's doing in Michigan, Pennsylvania, as well as Georgia, Lynn Wood's efforts as well. And we'll see what happens. I don't know every piece of this. I do think, however, there is the expectation that something funny will happen because in the same time we're talking about this, we've had low-level war happening between China and India for a while, a lot of probing attacks over there. Iran and Israel are about to go at it again, and it looks like Israel is trying to provoke it, but who knows every piece of it. Iran had their top nuclear scientist apparently assassinated, and I'm sure they're not in a very good mood. So not that I want anything to be involved with the Middle East, because remember, you're learning from an Atlantic perspective. But I am telling you what's happening in the United States, because if the country goes to war with itself, then maybe we should go a different way, for crowning Christ, maybe. I don't know, something a little different. We need to really be thinking. You like that? Kenny's watching. That's good. So those are some of the things that I am thinking about and looking about. But I will say something, and I will say, so I'm going to do a character profile on Tata, because one of the things that's interesting is the guy is obviously smart. He's willing to consider, how should I say, non-standard ways of attack. He's definitely willing to go ahead and get dirty, but he is a true believer in America, even with all its flaws. And that is something that may be a weakness that he has to deal with, because he's fighting, if you want to think of it, the globalist faction just sees America as a chip on the table. The nationalist faction has a love of the country and its institutions that probably is beyond what's warranted. And I say that with all due respect, but we need institutions that serve us, and anyone who's studied this seriously, like I have, has concluded in the last 60, 70 years they don't. Now, does that mean I don't have sympathies toward one side or another? No, I do have sympathies on one side, because I have no interest in globalists who are going to go around, enact a great reset on me, and send Brother Klaus to go ahead with his rent-a-cops to cause our life to become miserable. Nonetheless, the nationalist side hasn't done well enough at going the other side of it. And I would just say the best advice I've received is that we got to sit back and watch this, because if it gets real funny, we may have unit versus unit. And if that happens, there's not much we can do as people other than look out for one another, care for one another, be prepared for whatever is coming, and understand that this is a volatile situation that can happen very quickly. I do believe that what is happening is the side that if Trump's side does have the actual goods, that they're trying slowly to go ahead and open things up and to allow people a way to walk things back where possible, because they don't want to break the whole system. That being said, I don't know if that strategy will work, because they're fighting people who will gladly break the whole system because that's what they want. The neoliberals want a global system. The far left wants a radical system. Although, interestingly, the far left has been sort of handicapped and kneecapped, if you even go further, by this whole thing, because they got in the non-Trump version, and he looked a lot like Dick Cheney. It's kind of funny and ironic how that works out, but it shows you just one more example of why the two-party system is broken, sad, and pathetic. And it's also, why we need to find a different way to do things. And we will. And that's why we talk about, this idea of Northeastern nationalism. You see, we got all the cool plates up there. We added a couple more in there just to show you. I want to say thank you to everyone who's sending those. I know we got a couple more in the mail. You told me they will end up on the wall. We got no on the bottom, which, the lighting's just not doing it any favors. But we added a couple more up there, so that's kind of fun. And actually, I kind of like this angle. Maybe we'll try that because I like having all that up there. I want to thank our good friends out there in Western New York, out in Region 2, the sheepdogs. They got our 6. We know that. Time's coming where we're going to need men to step up and be good law enforcement leaders, not following bad laws, but looking out for the interests of their people locally. And when things come out that are too dumb to be believed, don't believe them. Very important. So that is my opening thought for today. I've done a lot of research on it, and I do think there's a lot of credible things to these charges. And remember, if it's a civil rights violation, they don't have to prove that fraud happened. They have to prove that there's enough reason to check if fraud happened. And why is this important? Because of discovery. What is discovery? When you have a case and you want evidence to be added, these lawyers don't have the ability to go ahead and subpoena right up front this idea of criminal evidence. However, if there is merit in their case, they can request that information. If my guess is right, that information is there just waiting to be accessed. But the request has to be made first. And my understanding of the federal investigations that happen is they cannot go ahead and release this information until the courts ask for it and until the election process is fully completed, because it would affect that after the fact. And that way they can see who was and wasn't involved. So what am I expecting? I'm expecting the next 2 weeks to be fun and crazy. And I would say one thing to be afraid of: if the people who are the quote unquote elite faction feel like they're in danger of losing power, expect things to get worse quickly. Why? Because in chaos, there's opportunity. And that is something you have to keep an eye out. Because remember, you're fighting the New World Order. They do say chaos out of order, order out of chaos. So that is my sort of broad 20,000 foot view of what's happening right now. I do think that next week will reveal a lot. I would be surprised if the SCOTUS does not take this up, and I'd be even more surprised if they don't at least open up evidentiary hearings to take a look at this and then figure out what actually was the case. But if they don't, there is one other area open, which is we could have military tribunals. And it's interesting that Sidney Powell is actually a military lawyer who is explicitly not linked with the Trump campaign, despite the fact she's in that orbit. And why is that relevant? Because if there were actions by foreign actors and the Insurrection Act is applied at some point, President Trump could, under the military emergency, and we are under a national emergency because of COVID, go ahead and use this in a way where they would be able to go ahead and prosecute these people as combatants under a sort of martial law-like situation if there was evidence. And the question is, who has what evidence? Does the NSA have it? Does the DIA have it? Does some other agency have it? And I've heard there have been fights over this. Apparently there was a shootout fight in Germany over that, and some CIA agent who went over there was said to be dead in Afghanistan when he died there. And conversely, we saw 5 soldiers potentially die. This is what's happening in the background in your government, and who knows? There's a lot of chaff. There's a lot of things going around as pure rumors. Can I prove any of this? No, I can't. But the point is, the narrative isn't fitting what we're seeing. And the silence is almost deafening as pieces are moving into play. It's almost like the sort of false war period right after Germany invaded Poland, but before they invaded France, where everyone just sat there for months, and then one day everything changed. And you need to be ready for that day, because that day could be tomorrow. So make sure you have enough gas in your car. Make sure you can get back safely. And safety is something that's been on my mind too. If I can share a personal story for a moment, Dana and I had an accident Wednesday evening when we were driving home from the doctor, and the car skidded off the road. It was very icy and wet on a back road, and we almost hit a tree and died, which is a pretty big deal. The tree was maybe 3.5, 4 feet in diameter, and I tell you, I turned the car into a ditch so that we wouldn't hit that, but the Lord was with us. Well, I turned it, but I'll tell you what the Lord did. The Lord made sure that there wasn't a stump there or something that could have been really terrible. And while it was 2.5 hours out in freezing cold, and I had the pleasure of meeting quite a few different people of law enforcement. By the way, I want to thank the people with Fire and Rescue and Sheriff's Department over in Somerset County. Consummate professionals, very helpful, as well as the good people from the tow company. But we did get it out. Oddly enough, the car amazingly still works, minus a little cosmetic damage. and we're just really grateful. But it gave us a chance. We had planned to maybe go and see some people on Thanksgiving, but neither of us felt up to it, because that's the thing. You don't know. Life is really short, and it comes at you fast. And you're worried about all these big things happening out there that could come on any minute. And meanwhile, it could be, the smallest thing. You could choke on. I could choke on the tea I'm drinking. Lord knows I choke on liquids enough. And I'm just grateful for it. So say hi to Dana. She's here as I'm finishing up the monologue. She might wave to you if she feels like it.
Yeah, we almost, instead of calling our families to say Happy Thanksgiving, you know what I'm saying?
Someone else would have called and said womp womp.
It could have been really, really bad.
I know. I need to make a second in command for like the Atlantic movement. Knaz, I hope he's here. He'll be in charge. See if he can handle it. If not, maybe we'll put McLean in front of it. He'll have to raise himself up and being a knuckle dragger. Use his phrase. He likes to say that.
I think that was probably one of the most terrifying moments of my entire life.
It was very frightful. But we've survived, so we are here, and we will continue. And if anything ever happens to me, my books live on, and hopefully you guys can enjoy it. I can't even show you my book of In God We Must. I've had such demand for it. I actually had to loan it to someone who really needed it for reasons. But we'll get some more books forward and go. It's the holiday season. All right, let me sell myself for a second. I write great books. I'm smart. I'm clever. You'll enjoy them. Go get an Audible book if you want to send to someone. Introduce someone to the idea. Find someone who doesn't agree with you and send them my books. I'm actually pretty good at reaching people in between. So that's my little effort. But if you want to support the program, buy some books, send some money on Venmo, do a super chat, do something, make this a little easier. I know we're all broke. What can we do? But I promise you we'll make it on the back end. We'll kill all the debts, and one day we'll have to do a show on all this domestic stuff. But frankly, I don't know what's going to happen week to week, and I know we're all kind of sitting back, watching and waiting, and we're going to have to see what the next steps are. But I've been doing my research. I mean, it looks like I'm just reading fiction novels, but I'm trying to understand the philosophy of the people who are behind things, because I will tell you, as someone who wrote some fiction, you can learn a lot about someone by the way they build characters. You can't create a character stronger than what you have inside of you, or you will evolve to match your character. It's actually a really interesting thing. There's nothing quite like fiction writing, because you literally find yourself awakened to possibilities you couldn't imagine. And it changes the way you look at the world, because it's going to sound a little schizophrenic and multiple personality to say this, but you really do gain a whole new appreciation of the world. So I think that's a pretty important point. But from here, let's go forward. Your questions, my thoughts, entertainment. We don't know what's going to happen. We're going to go at least an hour if you guys can keep me busy. If you don't, then that means I get to get back to my book. So it's up to you how that goes. But thank you for being with us here on Free Atlantic Radio tonight. Appreciate that. And we will continue our work, by the way, to provide more resources. I am working on some things behind the scenes where if this doesn't all blow up and we find ourselves in a more normal way going forward, which I think is pretty improbable. But if we do, nonetheless, I'm beginning to put some infrastructure down, because ultimately, if we don't, we can't communicate. And how much do any of us trust YouTube? My obscurity saves us, and thank God for throttling and people who can remember to set their watches, because otherwise this program would be gone. And the problem is I haven't found a good live place to do it. I saw this one called Brand New Tube that's pretty good. I mean, I know a lot of people like going to DLive, and they're very fond of it, but DLive is such a niche audience. And you don't think?
DLive.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's a niche. No, I don't know.
No, it's not.
All right, Dana tells me it isn't. So let's see. So let's philosophical questions out there. Give me something to get my teeth into. I've only got 3 of them. It's not going to work that hard. All right. Let's see. FEMA Region 2 checking in. Said, good to see you, John. I hope all is well out there. Our love to the good people out there in the Niagara region. No Step on Snack. Definitely good to see you. Welcome here. You know who that is. Don't be a turkey. Wear a mask. Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, our taxpayer dollars paid for those ridiculous masks he showed at his recent press conference. Did you see some of the email or some of the Twitter shots? There was a big thing in New York where I saw a lot of people on Twitter were sending pictures of huge family gatherings for Thanksgiving to Andrew Cuomo, to Andrew Cuomo. I thought that was absolutely great. Just and don't let them take things away from you. You have the right to resist, of all things. It's like what's the song? The Coy Hart song, "Never Surrender," right? That'd be a great theme for people these days.
Maybe.
All right, we'll see. If you guys don't give me enough, I will sing, and you don't want to deal with that. My singing is horrible. Let's see. No Step says, do I think martial law will be declared anytime soon? I think after Biden is inaugurated, martial law will be declared for the lockdown. I don't think Biden's going to get to inauguration, but I do think if Biden does get in there, yeah, he will do a national lockdown. And the question is, will people resist? In the cities, they won't. In the rural areas, it's going to be trickier. I mean, the problem is we have paradigms in this country where neither side can accept the other side winning, and that causes it very difficult. I mean, how do you reconcile between two different views of the world that are so disparate? And with respect to the lockdowns, the one thing that I think is most telling is if you look at the actual fatality statistics, separate out the causes for it, but just look year to year, same amount of people are dying as ever. So yeah, people are getting COVID, they're getting sick. I don't want to make light of it. I got a friend who has long-term problems, autoimmune systems. But there's people who have that. Dana has chronic Lyme. You don't hear people shutting it down the forest because people get bit by ticks. I got another friend who has lupus, the same sort of thing. How many people have Alzheimer's? Did anyone talk about shutting down the 5G towers? No, we give them immunity. So, what's the real story here? And I'll just tell you, as we go forward and we see the push to ramp up the vaccination schedule, I think we got to push back against it. I read a story. It was one of those green text stories on 4chan early this morning, but it's worth sharing it. It was from a person in the Ohio National Guard who said they were all just vaccinated. And they said, you sign this, don't ask questions. And it kind of makes me wonder, my own worst fears of these things. What happens when you can do some internal programming with nanotubes, carbon nanoparticles? You read all these different things, and the military's getting it first, and the first responders and the kids. And it's just like the people who have the most ability to shape things are going to be the ones most vulnerable. And if any of you saw the picture of the woman with the grievous sores, maybe Dana can put a link up if she has it. The story to this woman, it was terrible. I mean, it looked like her feet were rotting off. And they put up a GoFundMe for this woman. She was a volunteer. I think it was the AstraZeneca vaccine, if I remember right. And then they took it down. Because she can't raise money now. She is a forbidden story because you're not allowed to tell this story because it goes against the narrative, and it's absolutely sad and tragic. And I pray for that woman's soul if she still has one. And I know that's heavy for me to say, but these are the stakes of this. And if, they said even the very elect would be deceived in times of tribulation, I can't do my job properly without warning you. We are dealing with things that are that evil and people who are looking to unmake humanity. That's what the transhumanist agenda is really about if you begin researching it. And Lord knows I have. And we can talk about that too if you want. So, but I don't expect to see martial law from Biden. I do expect to see community policing where thugs are made into cops. And that's sad for the professional law enforcement people who actually take their job quite seriously, and who we need to begin building deeper relationships with, the kind that Sheriff Mack and others talk about. Let's see. If Trump somehow brings the voter fraud case to the Supreme Court and gets a free term, riots will occur and martial law will be declared by that. Maybe I have a nihilistic viewpoint. If your observation is that either way we end up in a fight, you've realized the point of the whole thing. The purpose of all of these struggles is the controlled demolition of the United States as the current system, and it's a global effort that is happening. So there are worse and better paths to pick, but nonetheless, you are absolutely correct that we do end up in a bad spot. 12-pack, good to see you. Always being the most insightful and forward-looking man on the tube. Been with you since the start. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I've been all around, Lord knows, just trying to put information in front of people in a way that's useful, keeping families safe, and doing some good analysis. So, I mean, right now it's hard for me to give a deeper analysis than what I gave at the beginning of the show, only because there's too many variables and we just don't know. But I will tell you one thing. I'm sure there's another shoe waiting to drop, and behind it there might be a whole Payless just waiting to dump on someone's head. So be ready for that, all right? Let's see. At your Last Supper, who would you sound yourself with, just as did Christ? What would be the first topic of table talk? Well, of course, we would talk about the Buffalo Bills. No, just kidding. What would we actually do if I could have? I mean, I guess I would ask, like, would it be people I know? If it'd be people I know, a lot of you guys would be in there. But there are some really interesting people who I've gotten to know. And what would we talk about? I think that if I had the opportunity to have something like that, what I'd talk about is how I wish I would have reached more people. I wish that, more people would have been brought to Christ, obviously. but also the things that were precious in life, the things that were temporary. It's funny. The big things are awful, and the little things are great. Like, I'll give you an example. You're out walking out on a hiking trail or something. You look over a lake and you see something beautiful. There's just like a sunset or a sunrise, or maybe a bird lands, or just something. There's always those little moments that sit with you, and that's all life is. It's a collection of moments, and you build the narrative between them. And so often we allow those moments to drag us into narratives we don't really believe or don't really want. And that's what we have to learn. And I guess that's what I talk about, how we could have like really brought ourselves to the thing where we thought of days as a treasure. And maybe it's just because I almost entered the end, world. But I am thinking about the value of days in life. And I tell you one thing I've learned: try to be nicer to people, try to be kinder to people, try to be a little more understanding. And even when they're stupid, explain their stupidity and help them. And sometimes you can't, but sometimes you can. And I don't know. I've known some really good people. We have some great people who listen to this broadcast, people with real talent and ability. And I don't know, I'd like to do something more for all of us. We were having a conversation in the Telegram chat, which you should join, t.me/Atlantic Homeland. And Kanaz was saying, having a philosopher king is the best governance. And, I'm neither a king nor a full philosopher, but I'll do till someone better comes along, as the story goes. Nonetheless, I would say that we have a lot of philosophers in this chat, people who love wisdom and who seek it. And I think that that's important because, like I said on my one broadcast, but this is fifth generation warfare. And what is fifth generation warfare? It's where you bring the spiritual back in. You do what God wants you to do. That gives you authority. That gives you integrity. You do what's moral and right for your people, and you do things in a way that's popular, where you can get support behind it. And it doesn't mean you give up your issues, you give up your identity, but it means you build something new, because these identities we have, they suck. Capitalist versus communist, Democrat versus Republican. They're not working. They're not working for any of us, because while we're fighting over all these sort of interesting things, our country's going broke. Our money is fake and phony, and we're getting way behind on it. How many people can't afford to pay their bills? Ultimately, even the heating company won't send you coal for the holidays. I mean, at least Scrooge got that much. You kind of wonder, but maybe we need to have a humbug to come back to them. So that's what I'm thinking about. But what would be the topic of table talk? It's a good thing to wonder. Beans, yeah, beans. Murray's got the truth of that. We need more beans. Fabian, c'est no. Let's see. Howdy, Tom. Good to see you, Simple Farmer. Glad you're here. Joe Biden, the white oak. I know. When you think charismatic and all that, yeah. But Biden kind of reminds me of a guy who's like a creepy Santa Claus. You ever get a vibe off that? Someone who's just in it for the wrong reasons. I don't know. I've never liked Biden. I didn't like him during Obama either. They weren't putting their best forward, and I really do believe that election was stolen. I have no idea, but it explains why people like McCain wins. Like, because some of you guys are a little bit older. Like, let's go back to the last few elections, right? Did anyone really like McCain? I don't. I mean, and I knew him as my senator in Arizona growing up. I mean, some of the people who've come through. I mean, and look at Hillary. Lord knows that woman. I mean, people say, "Oh, it's just because she's a woman." No, it's because she's evil. You can go back and see some of the people she defended back in the day, but I don't know. I mean, if you go back, if you do the research on it, you go back to Mina and you look at CIA involvement things, and George Bush being the director and Governor Clinton bringing the planes in. It really does make you wonder how much of this runs in drug money and circles like that. Because if you start doing your research, then you go down the rabbit holes. Go read something by Gary Webb, for instance. What was it called? Dark Alliance or something, I think. Maybe that's not it, but Gary Webb was the guy's name. You can find all sorts of stuff. In fact, that's what I've been doing. I've been doing some research about, theories of the hollow earth and kind of some fun things to think about, because once I finish reading these books, I've been looking, but the problem is it all goes back to channeling. It's weird how much of our prehistory is not caught up in archaeology, but in these weird sort of channeling things, but yet it leads to outcomes, just like the Vril Society did for the Germans. You can find things, or, you can go, or excuse me, the Thule Society. So you can find all sorts of interesting things if you know where to look. But asking the questions, I kind of find if you go back, you can kind of leapfrog from person to person. And if there's any young researchers out there looking at this program, it might be a really interesting thing for you to go back and figure some of that out. So if you like the program, by the way, hit like, check that you're subscribed, say nice things, do all the things that you're expected to do, because I come in here. It certainly isn't profitable, but it is profitable in terms of reaching a lot of people. And we do okay. I mean, I could reach a lot more people, but it's hard. I mean, I'm on lists and they don't like me to talk because I say things that makes sense. And I think the biggest thing they don't like about me is they want to paint me as this horrible person, and I just don't fit the mold. I do say some things that are politically incorrect. I believe some things that are politically incorrect because I'm generally an honest person, especially about stuff like that. I mean, the only thing I tend to lie about is like if I have an extra piece of candy or something, because I'm a fat kid at heart. Hopefully, I won't be one in reality. I got to work on that a little bit this winter, but nonetheless. Yeah, I know my wife's laughing at me over there. But those are the sort of things. And, we try to humanize the show a little bit because we talk about scary things. And I'm here to confirm that, yes, it is scary. And, yes, you will survive this. You've got thousands of years of genetic engineering in you to survive horrible situations. It's been a little rusty. Start dusting it off the shelf. If you can't run to the mailbox, at least walk to it, What do we got here? Why does Trump pardon Flynn but not Assange? Because Flynn was someone who was in his orbit, and Assange is hated by a lot of the intelligence community. But I agree with you, Free Julian Assange, and they should pardon him. WikiLeaks did a heck of a job in getting Trump elected. And if you don't believe that, I got some spirit cooking you can eat right here. Trump's election attack ends December 14th, whether he knows it or not. Let's see. Smash the like button. Tom, did it take you practice to improvise on what you speak about? When I improvise in videos, it turns out terribly. I can only write scripts. So the truth is, I am incredibly charming and debonair, and that's why I can do this. I mean, no, I'm used to getting pounded by people. It's a habit. Learning to be able to speak very quickly requires you to have a high knowledge base, which I do, and it requires you to be willing to open up. My show uniquely is Stream of Consciousness. I have done a couple interviews before, back when I had my old one, Conversations with Tom, with my little hick theme that I love. Anyway, but that was a long time ago. But it's a little harder to do interviews because you don't know where to jump over people unless you have sort of a repartee going. But you learn and you work at it. And look, if your thing is that you do prepared scripts, do it, or let the evidence come forward. It took me a long time. When I was a young person, I was very awkward. In fact, I didn't really speak till my 20s because I found my own thoughts more interesting than most of the people around me. But I realized the world got more awful if I didn't share some of those. And what you learn over time is a degree of self-effacing humor, a little bit of humility, and you find a way to go ahead and present yourself. So with this show, I get on here and I think, hey, I'm just talking to some of my friends sitting around drinking, well, in this case, warm tea. But if you want to pick whatever beverage or libation you're enjoying tonight, go with that. And what you do is you just go forward and you say what you really think. And if it seems a little canned, look, it's always weird doing a show like this, right? Because I'm staring into a camera, sometimes past it at my wife, who might sometimes laugh or make a funny face, and sometimes I'll drop a little joke for her. But it is weird doing this way, and it takes a little while. But you learn to do it, and one way you can practice is start having a monologue in your head. And what do I mean by that? Don't be an NPC. Here's what you do. Consider abstractly thoughts. Consider what it would mean to other people. Pretend you're Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, right? People always love my pop culture references. I think of every person in every situation and everything they could do, and I'm ready for everything. That's kind of how I work. Now, mind you, that level of neurosis has cost me all my hair from above about my ear line, but it has allowed me to have a somewhat entertaining program here on the tube. So hopefully that helps. And other than that, just give it time. I mean, my first couple books I wrote, I spent 18 months to sell about 18 books. And I couldn't even get some family members to buy it, which, by the way, I know who you are. And if I had a whale, it won't be with you. But no, just kidding. That's true about the books, though. And then you never know what's going to work. And you just find it, and you find your niche. And some people, some people are better just presenting evidence and presenting arguments, and let their graphics do the talking. That's one of the things a lot of videos do. It's a lot harder, I think. Well, no, I find it harder to go ahead and build a proper video. I've done it before, and it takes me like 12 hours, and I hate it because then I have to play with technology. And at this point, I just want to be grumpy and, like, I don't know, throw wood at things. But I don't know. It's weird as you get older. I know I don't have a chainsaw. It's terrible. That's because I'd cut my hand off. You know it. You know I would cut my hand off if I had a chainsaw. How much you want to bet I would lose a finger?
Oh, good thing for you. I know first aid.
Oh, that's what we're gonna go on. It's not like, hey, but like, oh, I got a tourniquet for that. That's great. Yeah. We're gonna call you Splinter, because you're so wise. Splint the hand.
I got Euro down there. Stop the bleeding.
There's nothing like like homeopathy when you're imagining major bleeding.
That's not homeopathy. That's naturopathy.
That's naturopathy. Yeah, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. So Dana's got this. Don't worry. So when I'm bleeding out, it'll smell like potpourri. Anyway, this is what we got for planning up here. So always improve your planning and don't. And there's actually a really teachable lesson out of this. While it's good to be as prepared as you can be, know your limitations. If you're someone who doesn't know how to throw a grenade, don't throw a grenade. Find a workaround. For instance, if you're someone who knows that cutting wood is not going to be your strength, invest some of your money in buying a couple cords. Be prepared for your own weaknesses and be honest with yourself. You can lie to everyone else. You can lie to me. You can lie to well, you can't lie to God. God knows. He's going to call you at it. But you really shouldn't lie to yourself. So if you know you're bad at something, just admit you're bad at something. Like, oh man, I'm bad at tying ropes. I'm bad at tying knots, winching things. I've almost lost a car off this because I'm so bad at it. I don't know why I'm that bad. You would think simple things evade me. Give me a very complex problem I can solve in 10 minutes. Put a Chinese finger trap in front of me and watch me show my short bus credentials. This is literally how I am. And I don't know why I'm this way. I don't like being this way. I can't whistle. Even when I had teeth, I couldn't whistle. It was terrible. I couldn't do anything. Or I couldn't like put in a hula hoop. I was always terrible at that. I didn't learn how to dance until I was, 38, 39. Dana had to teach me I had hips. I didn't know this.
I had to teach you that you had bones.
I know. I was like, wait, you can move there? There's a pivot there? I'm like, and because I walk like
walk like an orangutan.
Well, apparently I walk like an orangutan.
Like if a giraffe and orangutan had a baby, it'd be you.
Oh, that's nice. How does that work?
Because you have long legs and you have long arms and you're round in the middle, like a giraffe. I mean,
so now for future things, now I just need to contract with some Chinese and I'll make like an official mascot of us. We'll have a giraffe with a pine tree on it.
It'll buff.
That's funny. That's funny. All right. Let's see here. Chris, good to see you. Glad you're here, brother. And glad everyone's here, by the way. We're going to go through your questions. Don't worry. You won't have to deal with just our sick sense of humor. And I'll probably have some morning shows for you next week. I know you guys like some of the deep dive things. I really haven't had much, though. I mean, if it's the same thing you see on all things. If I have something secret, I'll tell you. But I haven't had anything for a while. Let's see. I'm glad you guys are all right. Thank you, Sneck. I appreciate that. Chris, glad to see you're okay. All right. Oh, there's a whole bunch of things here. Let's see what else we got here. I'm going to have to go back here. All right, because it's kind of weird here. Did Sasquatch cause you... Okay, no. My book series can be found on Amazon. Absolutely. Enjoy that. I have a really good idea for a fantasy series. We'll see if I can do it. Did Sasquatch Oak drive you off the icy road? Man, the thing about this road, this is what pissed me off. It's flat mostly. It's just the ice was just... It was just a skid, and you get stuck in a track, and... What happened is it was colder earlier in the day and it got warmer and it kind of rained. So it made a couple skids. And I probably should have taken a different route, but whatever. So I did survive. Let's see. I stumbled onto Pete Saltilli this week. Have you listened to? Huh?
Did I die then? You survive?
Well, I don't know. Are you still here? Are you alive? Let's confirm. Are you alive?
Maybe.
Well, we don't know. Jane is the MIA. She might be there. She might not. We don't know. Maybe she's been placed by a doppelganger. Ooh. That's a creepy thing. All right. I stumbled on Pete Saltilli. Have you listened to him? I didn't listen to him this week. I have listened to him. Generally speaking, if you want to know who I like to listen to, just because it's maybe interesting, I like to listen to Doug Hagman. I find him entertaining. I find Steve Quayle very entertaining, personally. I do listen to a little bit of Hodges. But Hodges sometimes... I don't want to say what I don't want to say...
Cold takes.
Dana says hot news, cold takes. I have never said that. I've never claimed that. That's just the way it is. Who else do I like listening to? Who do I learn things? Israeli News Live does a good job. Steve Benoon and all that. John B. I used to listen to John B. Wells more, but I haven't in a while. I know Dana loves Dr. June Knight. She thinks she's great. So that's like her. June. She loves Mama June. Sometimes I'm a little less enthusiastic. I like Anthony Patch. Roy Potter's got interesting takes. I mean, these are people you probably don't hear about. Saltilli's okay. Sometimes I listen for Tim Pool for a little bit more of a mainstream take, but it kind of depends. If I'm driving around, I listen to more. If not, I tend to read, and I've been sort of catching up on deep reading now because I kind of have a hunch, like, here's how I look at it. Events are going to come at us pretty quick. you better have a plan for what you want to do and take some time to thinking. One of the best pieces of advice I've given people is you need to be able to act and not react. What's the loop? You want to get inside someone else's ability to plan. Don't let things happen to you. That's how you become a victim. Okay? Let's see. Remember I told you about my new username? I do remember. I'm under a new username as well. Well, it's good to see you, Brosif, whomever you are. You'll have to tell me later. Sing for us. You guys do not want me to sing for you, you know? You believe me, you really don't. But maybe we'll do a holiday show. We'll do it. I'm all out of love. I'm so lost without you. Yeah. I actually like making love. I had nothing at all. But anyway. All right. I love Air Supply. Did I actually hit a moose? And is Dana now having you fill the freezer with moose? You wish I would have hit a moose. I do have moose steaks, though. I knew a guy.
A moose would take the entire
Yeah, seriously, the moose. You'd be almost better hitting the tree than the moose, to be honest with you.
We would be decapitated if we hit a moose in that car.
That's true. Chris writes, the thing I'm finding about COVID is this real story as I've been taking care of them from the beginning. Majority of people do okay. However, some people have long-term problems and keep getting red mites. Well, I don't know what that or readmitted. Oh, I'm sorry, readmitted. Sorry, I'm looking at this from an angle. Yeah, that's fair. And I think, and look, between the level of saying it's all felony and saying that it's the end of the world, there's an era of truth, which I think Chris is hitting, which is it's a bad disease. You don't want to get it, but it probably doesn't warrant us going ahead and shutting down all civilization. And, the response is disproportionate. And it's not just disproportionate. It's wrong, some of the stuff that's out there. But it's something we'll have to keep an eye on. And, never forget this was a artificial disease. Oh, by the way, I got Klaus's little book there. The fourth Industrial Revolution. So we'll see what it is. And at some point I should do what they do to me. I'll debunk it. Maybe I'll do a fact check. Would you guys like a fact check? I should do more fact checks. Let's see. People want to include Murray. Definitely include. Everyone wants Murray.
I want Republican.
Murray.
Republican Randy.
You want Republican Randy? Well, they don't want Republican Randy. I will, if Trump loses at some point, if he actually gives in, I'll do a Republican Randy show. No, I'm not doing it right now. I have to be in the mood to do it. I have to be much more snarly. I have to be better hydrated to do that impression. Besides, I don't want to make fun of anyone tonight. I don't have the energy. It's Thanksgiving. We should be grateful, and besides. All right, let's see. Tom, Richard's here. Good to see you. Richard Lopez. Any thoughts on Canada? Lots of talk of the grid being hacked and going down. Even Schwab was ranting on it. Are they're going to do? You should expect if something gets funny, the grid going down will be one of the things that will happen most quickly. I think that's a reasonable expectation. How long it'll be down, who knows? Any thoughts on Canada? Yeah, Canada's building internment camps, and Trudeau's basically just doing whatever he wants up there. I don't trust the current Canadian regime. I do think that they're taking a better care of their people in general. So let me give credit where credit's due. But I also think they recognize that a currency reset's inevitable and probably a good thing because otherwise they would be in trouble. As you know, here in the Atlantic Nation, and I owe the Canadians a better episode because I need to watch more than 22 minutes and talk about Tim Hortons stories. But yeah, from what I can tell up there, the Canadians I talked to seem relatively content just to not be living in America right now because they're watching what's happening here. But it depends where you live. They have their issues up there. Alberta, as always, wants to separate. Ontario wants to act like the rest of the world, and the Quebecois want to worry about the Quebecois. So we'll see what happens. All right, don't forget Giles, man. I never forget Giles.
I don't even know where Giles is.
Giles is on the third floor. I lied, actually. Giles is right there. We can see him. He's on the couch.
That's not Giles.
It's not Giles?
It's Juno.
That's Juno. Oh, Giles must be on the third floor then. Okay. Let's Admiral Richard Byrd. Okay, tinfoil hat time. So Tico's, I think it was 47 up to the North Pole, where he records this diary where he claims to be taken to this underground base of a place. It's not called Agartha. He calls it something else. But essentially, where they were saying the nuke tests were starting to mess with the Earth so much that people were going to get involved coming from the inside. And you hear rumors for a lot of years that there were these catacombs that elites had the possession of. and that a lot of these families had access to them and that they had different ways to these other areas. And remember, we've always seen demons and evil entities coming up from the earth. So maybe there's something to it in the same way that, vampires were like bloodsuckers who lived forever. And you see these, older people like the Rothschild types who use adrenochrome the same way. And you can actually see this. People get blood transfusions from younger people to stay young. There's something about what they call it, the vitae of the blood. All these things may have elements in the history of it. I've actually thought too that'd be a fun thing to do. Maybe do like an Art Bell type show or something. Put on the cool glasses. Do I have those? Where did I put those? I love wearing these. It makes it 1,000 times easier to do the show. Now we're in evening hours. Put these on. So
I'll hit up and do conspiracy theory gimmick guy.
Well, I could do a whole show. I mean, I know a lot of conspiracy theories, but we should talk about
Nobody
that.
knows about Project
All right. So let's talk Project Loon. Yeah, let's do that. That's a good call. Good call, Dana. So Project Loon. Some of you have heard of what's it called? Starlink. Elon Musk's satellite plan to go ahead and have high-speed internet. You can be monitored everywhere you go. So next time you're out taking a whiz in the woods, you'll be sure he'll be taking perv shots of you. So, but the next thing is Google is never one to miss out on this. So they have something called Project Loon, which I just learned about recently, and it's interesting. It crashed in the Navajo Res up there in Arizona. So what ends up happening is they've been perfecting these weather balloons and they're doing this mostly in the southern hemisphere, where they go ahead and they ride the currents and they figured out how to put a balloon inside a balloon and they use it to provide high-speed internet access to anywhere in the world. And that's what they're working on. So whether you think that's a really great thing to help empower a lot of poor people, or whether you think it's really creepy, nonetheless, we are actually seeing that. So that's Project Loon. It's worth taking a look at because it appears like it's starting to go active. And it does make you kind of wonder, what's happening, why they're so concerned with getting absolutely everywhere covered so quickly. But, on one hand, you could look at it as economic growth and you could look at it as altruism by people who want to make the world a better place. On the other hand, you could remember these are people who eat and spit people out all the time and recognize that maybe you need to be a little bit more dubious. Whether you see the glass as half full or half empty, I will let you decide as ever, but I'm going to take a big drink of it and say that it looks more empty every time I learn a little bit more.
Everyone wants to know why you don't have a chainsaw.
Is it seriously? Do I have to get to that? The reason I don't have a chainsaw is my dexterity when it comes to tool usage leaves much to be desired. Look, I know you guys all think I'm probably like badass about absolutely everything, right? And there are some things I am very good with, surprisingly, but there are some things that I'm just not as good with as I'd like to be or as I need to be. And using heavy duty power tools is just something. My brother is the mechanic in the family. The dude, James would have a welder and he'd go nuts on it and do those things. And then, he has his challenges. He wouldn't read a book, let's put it that way. But conversely, I just have a certain set of skills that are, I can think through problems. I can understand mechanical engineering well.
Set of skills.
I do. I'm. What, you were taken with that little joke you made?
Yeah, I was. Was that Liam Neeson?
It was.
Okay.
You missed my little pun in the back.
No, I got the pun.
You just didn't laugh at it.
I was laughing. I am laughing.
Okay.
It's funny.
It is funny.
You still should get a chainsaw. I think that would be funny too.
Well,
if you guys you guys want to buy Tom a chainsaw for Christmas, I'll make sure I videotape it.
If I buy a chainsaw, it's gonna be like a reject Halloween movie. What happens? Trapped in the ivy.
Don't worry.
The story of a scholar who tried to use a chainsaw and instead lost limbs. Forget the Saw movie. It'd be like it'd be like the video of like The Hazard, like what not to do, because we just know this. I mean, and that's what see my wife. Okay, so since she's here, she's now a part of the show. My wife, with her Germanic roots, is fascinated by tools and likes to use things very orderly. She micro-organizes, right? So she always has a perfect tool for the perfect job, the perfect way, and does it exactly. She measures things to the half
how many
ounce.
women do you know how to put a hole through metal? Me.
That's you. I know that's you, and I am not. Yeah, I know my limitations.
I just wing it though.
Unfortunately, my wife doesn't accept my limitations. I tell her my limitations constantly, and I try. I really do.
And I encourage you to expand your horizons. That's what I'm supposed to do.
The only thing I'm expanding is my waistline, and actually the beard's coming. What do you guys think of the beard? Is it growing on you? I mean, we've been talking about what to do with it. I'm gonna let it grow through the winter, and we'll see if it gets truly gnarly here how it goes. But I have been combing it more to try to make it seem. I mean, we're heading into like Civil War. I ought to have the look for it. I look like I could fit into the thing for it. All right. But anyway, Toroid Earth is the real red pill. I appreciate that, Eki, and I actually am familiar with that. We'll have to see. Maybe we'll have to fund an expedition one day. I'd love to see some of the stuff. I've heard some really weird stories about Antarctica, actually, but that's another day. Let's see. Dude, what I found on the internet last night probably got you on an FBI list. I got bad news. Listening to this broadcast probably got you on an FBI list. Sorry. Oh, well, you learn. You know what? All the cool kids will be there. Don't worry about it. You'll be good. G6, Genesis 6 equals Nephilim, man. Actually, you do know because we talked about that. We're going to have to go through that. Never click on an article by the NCAC. All right, for that. What else we got here? Let's go through what you got here. Bald equals brains. That was what my dad used to say. He used to always say, you can either have hair or brains. That was one or the other. So with much love to everyone who has hair as well, I'm going to go ahead and use that quote as useful for myself. I kind of wish I could have hair. I have an interesting look.
I don't think it would look right on you at this point.
Really? You're so used to me being bald? You've seen pictures of what I look like with hair.
I have, and you look like a completely different person.
I do look like a completely different person.
You're all cute and adorable and stuff.
And now what do I look like? Truck stop Tom?
Yeah.
I actually do look like I could go undercover, you know what I mean? 18-wheeler. Eastbound down, loading up and trucking.
You know what my neck thing is?
I have no idea. Hey, everyone, I don't have a chainsaw. Let's see. Tom, I cut my hand off. Dana, it'll buff out. She would probably say that. She'd probably be like, honey, this will be okay. You can use this some other way. It's fine. Or you can get a cool claw or something. My wife, let me tell you, my wife would try to jerry rig Edward Scissorhands to me. She would think, she'd like, you always use that X-Acto blade. We're going to just put a Swiss Army knife with all these bigger things on you. It'll be awesome. You'll love it. It'll be so cool. I'm not joking. You think this is a joke. She would actually think this is good.
I'm creative like that.
You are creative.
I need my neck thing, man.
Dana, I'm in the middle of the show. I don't know where your neck thing is. Go find it.
I'm looking for it.
I don't know. How do I plan to survive a solar storm and magnetic disturbance if you don't have a chainsaw? Well, I'm probably not going to be going outside too much to cut trees down. I mean, I don't know. Look, if I wanted to, I'll tell you, this is the truth. I could close the doors where I am and not go outside for 2 years and probably be okay so long as the water keeps working. And even if it didn't, I'd still be okay for at least 6 months. So take that for what it's worth. I can survive a lot. And I've planned for my own weaknesses. That's one of the things you have to be prepared to do. Not only that, but I'm very friendly with other people around here who have much better skills, including you don't want to, if you really want to get technical, right? If you're up here in the woods, what you really want is a hydraulic log splitter. That's where it's at because you really need that to put the things for it, and then whatever you have besides that. But I know 20 different people with chainsaws who all have those abilities. They just count on me to put sentences together because that's what I do. All right, let's see. Sixth sense of humor. No, I have a sixth sense of humor. My brain is short circulating. Who is good to listen to? Who is woke on the JQ? Well, there's a lot of people like that, but you ain't going to find them on YouTube. My advice, go to BitChute. You might have some luck with that. Who would be good at that? You know what? Go find my buddy John Q. Publius. He's good at that. He can put some things. Blitz, good to see you. Glad you're here, brother. Let's see. Republican Randy is deep in his bunker with Data Dump Dana or Data Dump Dan. She should be Data Dump Dana because she does that to people.
That's
She'll come on.
I do data dump.
And so let me just put some terms to this because you don't know what data dump is. Data dump is what I do on some of my morning shows. If I have something like what you're supposed to do, I will tell you the whole theory of marketing of this, is you're supposed to tease a little story and tell one little bit and piece it out. Like so you can make money on videos. So in theory, I should make like 10 5-minute videos covering all these little topics and go ahead and let you just grab them as little pieces. Instead, what I do is I start a food fight at the old country buffet. I start throwing food at you, Golden Corral. I throw everything at you because that's how my mind works. And the funny thing is, my shows, and some of you who've watched me, and if you see me in person, I do this. My eyes kind of do this thing where I go, I'm actually working through the thoughts as I go through it. But the data dump thing is something my wife and I both do, which is we like to process a lot of information very quickly. You
sound like you're crazy. I sound like I'm crazy when I data dump.
You don't sound like you're crazy.
Yes, I do.
Like how?
There's just too much. I'll start out.
Well, the problem with your data dumps is this: you don't lay foundations.
I'll-
You start like it's like you're talking to someone in French who has never learned the language, and you're like, "Well, why don't you know the language? That's your fault." That's how you are. You kind of like jump off the preliminary steps that they need, like the foundational steps.
It would go all over the place.
Well, that could be true.
That's why I let you do the talking.
Okay.
So I don't sound like I'm crazy.
She lets me. She does let me. It's true.
Yeah.
My wife is pretty tolerant of my
my data dump is like frantic and
it's true.
Psychotic.
Well, the other thing too, to be fair to my wife, the one thing that makes it harder for her, she cares more than I do. She really does. She's a more caring person. She'll go through and she's like, I'm worried about you. I want to save your souls. I'm like, save it or don't, you know? Anyway, Murray, the hero we need, but not the hero we deserve. Murray is the hero, man. I would love to give Murray his own show. In case you've never met Murray, by the way, Murray is our turtle who's here. And Murray makes all sorts of interesting, sarcastic comments. And he actually makes videos, but we do not share those. So Murray is the man. If you ever see that Murray is who my books are dedicated to, that's Murray. So Murray spent a lot of good time with us because we've been lonely. We do those things. So good to see you, Astor. Hope all is well. Tom is channeling Corey Hart. Did you find it?
Yes.
I would love to sing Sunglasses at Night. We'll see.
Do you get copyright strikes for that?
No, because because I'm just reading the lyrics and I'm giving credit. No, because I would only do it if I played it in the background. Like I actually would love to start my show. I've actually thought about this. The theme song I'd like to have for the show would be "Extreme Ways" by Moby, but I'm not. They would never let me get away with that. But that'd be a cool song to have for this. Let's see. Elon Musk. Yeah, I know, right? Broseph, I should interview Robert Sapir if I do an Art Bell style show. He can cover Hollow Earth and Atlantis for you. Well, I will tell you something. I am talking to someone. I am trying to have next year a call-in show. And if we do some stuff like that and you guys decide it's worth a couple pennies, we'll actually go ahead and do some. Because the thing is, it takes a little money to do things. I'm not looking to get rich off you. I never ask for more than $20. But even $5 a month helps. And go buy a book. I put out books all the time. They're useful. They serve as paperweights. They serve as coasters. They're kindling for a fire. There's lots of good things you can use them for. Let's see. Plus, they get you on cool lists. Don't you want to be on a list? I mean, if something bad happens, you don't want to be the person waiting and, living in like Cormac McCarthy's The Road. You want to have it happen quick to you. You want to go walk in there proudly and go ahead and get turned into Soylent Green. All right. I'm kidding. The beard gives you all your knowledge and wisdom, dude. Don't shave it off. It's funny you say that. I got to tell you a story about that. So actually, since I've begun growing the beard, it does give you a different character. And you feel like you got little antennas on your face. Like I haven't had hair in so long. Look, I've been balding a long time. And I admit it. Before that, I had like a Gordon Gekko comb back because I'm just not. I don't really care about taking care of myself. My wife will vouch for this. I'm terrible about it. I'm like, I literally think of myself as a thought bubble. And I'm not really fond of blood, but that's fine. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, the beard has definitely grown on me, and I'm wondering if it'll do like a fun Slavic kind of thing where I can look like, I don't want to say Rasputin, but like an Orthodox patriarch or something.
Don't worry, I got those little mini.
I know you do. It does not mean she's who I know, right? How come most conspiracies seem to always point in one direction towards a certain small group of people? Well, it's a true thing that there's conspiracies that are successful are usually small. They involve people with power. Although I would say, with respect to what you're saying, if you go back and you look at these things, I would say that you can go even a little further back than you do and look who hired people to get into money lending, and you can go deeper in it. And what you find ultimately is what mobilizes people is an understanding of evil. So what is evil, right? Evil is the desire to have no awareness of others and to be pretty rotten to them. So, for instance, if you imagined that all you wanted from a Messiah was someone who would give you a general to conquer the world, that's kind of evil. And you might call it the Antichrist if you're a Christian, although you might call it your religion if you lived in a certain other place. Something to think about, but it's also the same sort of way you see certain institutions that claim to be Christian act, and some people who are a million miles away from any of this, which is why you realize Christianity's truth, and there's a lot of other lies that go out there around it. And it is a radical departure from what you expect, and it's hard for all of us, but it's the reason that I'm being nice to some people instead of telling leftists, that they need to do this, and that, because we have to be kind to our enemies, because ultimately we're going to be someone else's enemies. And I think that even though some things will probably be unable to be forgiven, that's sort of one of the things out there. But I think it is true. There are certainly small groups of people who should not be beyond rebuke, who should be looked at for what they do. And I think that it's important that we do that. And I try to do that in this show, but I try to be very clear, mainly because it helps you avoid getting shut down, that you need to be very specific what's out there and understand evil is deeper than simple explanations that are put out there. So whether you choose to believe that or not, that's your business. But that's how I look at the question. Let's see. Bros, okay. Do I believe in hollow earth and flat earth? Does it seem odd at all that Biden's pick for Secretary of State is someone named Abe Lincoln? I've never said it aloud like that, but that's actually pretty interesting. So Anthony Blinken is who we're talking about here. And let's see what his terrible things are. I don't know. This guy of blood and hope. Yeah, I don't know. I tell you what, who the heck? Well, I'm not gonna make that joke. That joke will get this shut down. I don't want to go there. All right. I don't want to make the flat earthers and hollow earthers versus middle earthers. Battle of the three armies, man. I'm rolling with the Numenorians. We'll go ahead and do that. The men of Numenor show up. Middle Earth is the name of Lord of the Rings and what was out there. But yeah, anyway, so I guess I answered all your questions. Let's do a prayer. I went an hour, 4 minutes. If you guys got other things, anything crazy, let's try to give me short hit questions, things that I can give you just like simple answers. We'll do a couple of those here in the very end, like things I can answer in 1 or 2 words or 1 or 2 sentences, and hopefully I won't wander too much. Other than that, let's say a quick prayer. Heavenly Father, I just pray for the safety of everyone over this holiday weekend. A lot of people are going to be traveling. A lot of people are going to be around family. Let there be a spirit of reconciliation. The Lord instructs us to love our enemies. Sometimes they happen to be blood relatives. If you've survived Turkey Day and you've gotten past that, you're probably through the worst of it. But remember, it's an opportunity because there are people who don't have time to be with people they love and cherish. As someone, my parents have already passed along. I think of them always this time of year, hoping that they made their way to heaven because they did confess Christ. So I'm sure they did. But nonetheless, I hope for that for each and every one of you also, and that God's blessings be upon you and your family for prosperity as we go into the Christmas season. So we'll leave that at that and just pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's see. What is the most interesting conspiracy theory that I have heard of that you don't believe but still find interesting? I find some of the stuff, I find the way people justify their theories interesting. I find some of the flat earther stuff interesting in terms of how they create maps. But what are some conspiracy theories that are interesting? I love maps. Yeah, no, I can spend all day around maps. And another lifetime, I was a cartographer. What's a conspiracy theory I don't believe but I find interesting? Well, it's what's the most interesting conspiracy theory you have heard of that I don't believe but still find interesting? What do I find? That's a good question. I should have a better answer for you because I tend not to discount a lot of things.
You have really interesting theories about Atlantis and Lemuria.
Yeah, but actually, so that's the thing. What are some interesting theories that Well, I like my conspiracy. Let's put it this way. I like my conspiracy theories to have a good historical background. I like them to have a degree of complexity. I like them to have a little bit of mystery. I don't like conspiracy theories that are overly heavy on channeling. There's so many that are. It's really disappointing. You go down a rabbit hole and you realize you find some mystic in a room somewhere who got high and had a vision of something. And it's amazing how many things start with that. Actually, a lot of the Hollow Earth does that. And it all goes back to, I guess this is something I would like to research. What were they finding up in the Himalayas and with these Hindu things? Were they really getting to the Himalayas, or were they just going to the foot of the mountain, finding a Buddhist priest and getting all toked up to the point where they were visioning things? I really do wonder what's happening with that. But yeah, no, the Hollow Earth's one, I don't know if I believe it, but I do find it very interesting. What are some other ones that I believe that are out there? I do believe that it's very possible that there are people walking around who don't have souls, the black eye people. I think that's another interesting one. But, we could do bullshit. Hybrids. Yeah, they could be. So I think that's interesting. What is the best Vegas Okay, I'll get to that. Are chemtrails as stupid as I think they are? Is there any evidence for them? There's a lot of evidence for them. What was the guy who did the show out of it? Was that Dane Wigington didn't do that? Who was the guy who did that? Is he Geoengineering Watch? check out some of the stuff. They have been doing weather modification for a very, very long time, and it's some of the materials in there are true, and they do cause problems. So yeah, there's a difference between chemtrails and contrails. I actually do believe in chemtrails. What is the best Vegas shooting explanation I've heard? Well, it isn't Stephen Paddock. One of the interesting things is that Saudi crown prince was in town that night, and I kind of often have thought this was related to that and perhaps an assassination attempt. But Vegas got memory hold real fast, and afterwards, a whole bunch of people ended up getting executed in Saudi Arabia. So I actually think that that's more likely the truth. But you don't hear a lot about that. Actually, I'll tell you a conspiracy theory I'm starting to believe. I'm starting to wonder if everyone at Fox is on the take, because not only that, but I've seen, because I usually like some of the things they say. Sean Hannity's running around with CIA badges. Tucker Carlson has a Kabbalah bracelet on, this red bracelet. Yeah, he has this red bracelet on. There's a video that was on, I think Godlike Productions had it, where Tucker was talking about some things off air. And I generally like Tucker and some of the things he says. But remember, no one gets on media at that level without having some links into things. And controlled opposition is still controlled. So I think that ultimately, I don't trust anyone who's too successful. Even Alex Jones, actually, I think that we've got to that point. But we'll see, what's a conspiracy theory? Talk about Building 7. We should do a retrospective on 9/11 for the people who don't remember that. Let's see. Don't chemtrails affect rich and powerful people as well? Maybe I'm not. Yeah, it does. And look, these people accept that. Yeah, they absolutely do. And rich and powerful people. The difference between rich and powerful people is they have access to better. They have different lifestyles they live a little bit, and they have access to better medicine, better food, and all those things. But yeah, look, we're all in it, and bad things happen, and they fight each other too. I mean, don't think because people are rich and powerful they just live healthy lives. They fight blood warfare against one another. Think of clans, and that they, even though they kind of serve evil purposes, a lot of times in these fights, that it's often the case that evil lets these things fight against one another. So those are some answers I have, and hopefully those are answering to you. But we've gone through. I want to thank everyone who watched the show tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'll be back definitely on Friday. We'll see on Monday. I don't think I'm going to be back on Monday next week, but I do think you might get some shows from me. I'm going to be following events, and I'm going to give you more like hits in the morning. I think that's better for what we're doing here, so that you guys will appreciate it. God bless each and every one of you. Have a very good night. If you haven't joined the Telegram group, t.me/Atlantic Homeland. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. God bless.